Across the country, employers are facing workforce shortages, changing skill demands, and real questions about how to grow in a competitive economy. Here in Maine, we're not just talking about those challenges, we're exploring ideas and partnerships that will shape what comes next. I'm Dan Belyea. I lead the Harold Alphons Center for the Advancement of Maine's Workforce, a program of the Maine Community College System. And welcome to Maine Ideas. Our podcast focuses on innovation and brings together leaders who share what's working and how Maine and the nation continue to grow. So let's get comfortable, stay curious, and let's explore what's possible together. Today's conversation focuses on the evolving role of workforce education and why community colleges are central to building opportunity in today's economy. Kate Kinder is the Executive Director for the National Council for Workforce Education, a national organization that supports community and technical colleges in advancing workforce excellence and innovation. In this episode, we'll talk about the future of workforce education, break down the divides between credit and non-credit learning, centering student voice, and how colleges can better respond to rapid change, employer needs, and the realities facing today's learners. Kate Kinder, it's so good to see you.
You as well, Dan. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Tell us about the organization that you represent.
The National Council for Workforce Education, or NCWE, is a national organization that supports community and technical colleges and our many partners to advance workforce education excellence and innovation. We are really focused on lifting up and expanding the practitioner-driven solutions and student-centered ideas. We do that through professional development, through technical assistance, through a lot of peer learning, and really helping to shape the narrative around an expansive understanding of workforce. So for us, it is too often it gets described as what workforce is not. It's just non-credit or it is just this. To us, workforce education is that whole continuum from integrated education and training, micro-credentials to credit certificates, CTE, apprenticeship, applied baccalaureate, all of the skill building in between that really gets people the skills that they need, the credentials they need to move into good jobs. So very much the work that you are doing in Maine and at Harold Alphons Center.
So, what brought you to this field and what motivates you to stay in it?
That's a great question. So, what brought me to the field is early in my career, I worked at a nonprofit and I was a therapeutic preschool teacher. I was also the bus driver. I was also many different things. But what I saw is how transformative access to education can be and getting good jobs. And so, how much of basic needs and security or the needs that the kids I was serving were facing was really a result of poverty and not having access to opportunity to get an education, to get credentials, and to get into jobs and careers that offered that living wage. So that's what brought me to it. And then I worked at a community college for close to 20 years and really just in a lot of different roles, always in workforce and really saw just how transformative it could be. And that workforce was really that innovative kind of R&D arm of the college, that collaboration was required with employers, with community, and really liked that inside outside element, but really focusing on what students need and creating opportunity for students. I came to the college because I expected it to get me a good job. I expected it to give me the skills that I needed for the next step in my pathway, but I didn't expect it to transform me so much as a person. And I really think that's the power of workforce education that often gets undersold as all those many two-generation benefits, that changing a person's sense of what's possible for them and their family, and then also really just getting them into jobs that fit their talents or interests and allow them to thrive and not just survive.
Your organization has a national focus. What are you seeing nationally about the work that's taking place? And you've got unique experience being in the weeds at a community
Yeah.
college for 20
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. I think what I see happen nationally is that what's happening at community colleges across the country in their communities, whether it's a rural area, a remote area, large urban area, is there's amazing work happening, and that doesn't always match up with the national discourse right now. And so I think that's what I'm continually struck by is if you go and spend time at community colleges across the country, amazing things are happening. And so that's, I guess, one of the things I'm seeing. I'm also seeing a trend right now that I'm really excited about is that we are finally working as a field to eliminate those silos between non-credit and credit or professional credit, skills training credit. I really love the renaming because defining things by what they're not is not, or in a negative tone is not very good marketing. So I'm excited that we are rethinking and really elevating the value that those workforce programs bring. I'm excited about the movement towards more hands-on applied learning. So whether that's work-based learning, incorporated internships, apprenticeship, I'm excited that many colleges are moving away from being so focused on seat time and moving into competency-based education, credit for prior learning, and really honoring the many skills that adults bring and recognizing that our student demographics are changing. I think Maine's certainly seen that. And I keep pointing to Maine's solutions as something that the rest of the country really needs to follow, that you've hit a lot of those demographic cliffs sooner than other states have. So if you are going to have a successful talent strategy, meet your workforce needs, we need to be serving everyone in our community and really look at ways to honor and serve adult learners better. So that's what I'm excited by nationally.
That's so awesome. You just talked about a whole bunch of opportunities. What are you
Yeah.
seeing as the most pressing workforce challenges that we're currently facing? And you've got this national lens and then be able to see all sorts of things.
I think that that's a hard question. I think one of the biggest challenges I've seen is just the rapid pace of change. And so, how do we use this rapid pace of change, the advent of AI, robotics, and different technological advances to close equity and opportunity gaps rather than exacerbate them? And so, I think it's easy to move into a space of AI is going to take away jobs and AI is going to do this. Well, instead, how can AI take away some of the tasks that we have to do on our day-to-day base that takes up a lot of time? How can we use it thoughtfully and intentionally? And then how can we reskill and upskill for other elements of the jobs and careers? So I think that's going to need a lot of intentional thought and partnership between colleges, CBOs, and the employers where these job changes are happening. I think certainly the shifting in demographics is going to be a big thing. So we have reached in most states the cliff where there will be less high school graduates coming. And so, really, we have less workers. And so, how do we really thoughtfully engage everyone who isn't able to contribute to the workforce in their community as they'd like or in a job that is meeting their needs? And so, that's another big opportunity. And then I think not specifically workforce, but I think that intersection of workforce and higher ed is really need to, I think, drive the discourse around the value of higher ed. So I think too often we're responding to the negative, that questioning the value of higher ed, instead of really not engaging in those zero-sum conversations and being very clear about the proven, consistent economic value of higher education, and that students continue to say that they value higher ed. What they don't value is having to go into debt or the lack of policies that support their enrollment in community colleges, which again is why Maine is such a front runner in the many ways you've done that through Harold All Fund and the incumbent worker training, through your free college efforts. I just think your state is doing a lot of things that the rest of the country should and could learn from.
Yeah, thank you so much for that shout out. I really love your vision around AI and what's going to take place. I think so much of the conversation is talking about hordes of folks going to be laid off and the jobs eliminated. In your lens is how do we think differently about the tools that are in front of us and prepare for folks that are going to need some skill change and the new jobs that will be created. It's fascinating to hear your optimistic view around that. What are some of the trends you're seeing from employers? Because you get to touch some national employers. Is there any data that you're hearing from those folks about the value of professional credit, which I've learned
Yeah,
that one recently
yeah,
and
yeah.
and I'm modeling that now.
I think that's where there's a lot of opportunity to do more research. I don't think we have enough research around the impact of specific those workforce professional credit programs. both from the employer side and from the student side. So I think there's opportunity to learn more there. I think you look at the states that have invested in the incumbent worker training options and the how much that has deepened their partnership with employers across all parts of the college, right? So whether it's their career and technical ed or different apprenticeship, different areas there. So I think if you talk to employers that have tapped into that, you hear consistently positive feedback. I think the challenge is figuring out how to make sure everyone knows what's available. How do you fund it state to state? And then how do you capture that in some great research too? I think more employers are looking at skills-based hiring. I think that's another big component here. But again, there's lots of opportunity to learn more about the data in those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about NCWE's insights, some of the impactful programs and innovative approaches that you certainly have been amplifying through your organization.
Yeah, so I think our goal is to really serve our network and our members. And so we are responding to what we're hearing from our college leaders and partners, and really the need and want to have more space to work with their peers, to share their challenges, to share the success, to scale different solutions, and also come up with new ideas. And so I found that throughout my career, I was really fortunate that I early on was part of a number of statewide or national networks. So whether our Career Pathways Alliance or some of the work class did around that, leading the SNAP ENT development of the SNAP ENT consortium in Oregon, and that community of practice, and just really the value of peer learning and creating effective space for that that's driven by the practitioners who have a lot of tasks on their hands and asks and priorities. And so we are really focused on shaping our programming and our resources around what our partners and stakeholders need. So a couple ways we're doing that is we are partnering with Rutgers Education Employment Research Center, and we created a community of practice. And EERC team will be doing research with 15 colleges and their students to find out more about the value of non-credit workforce education, what the goals are, what outcomes are, how it connects to their college and career goals. So that's an example of both doing research and the community of practice. We are doing a leadership development project right now where we're asking what college staff, faculty need to support their leadership development to become really transformative workforce leaders, to progress in their career and serve their constituents. And then a lot of what our effort is also around our annual conference. So that's a big professional development opportunity that is really focused on lifting up the practitioner voice. And so both the visionaries, big sky drawing what's possible, and the practical and tactical. So how can you take these ideas and apply it at your own college to benefit your students? So that's what we're ahead, or what's ahead for our organization.
Yeah, you must be reading my mind because you touched on the next question I'm going to be
Yep.
asking about is, the practitioners are one thing, but what about the student voices?
Yeah.
You have a big piece here that really can dive into that aspect of the holistic way that we look at training our individuals.
Yeah, I think student voice is key. We can't do our work if we aren't listening to students. And I think it's really key that we do that in a way that's not performative, that's really authentic and takes their expertise and directly impacts how we think of our policies and our programs and our partnerships. So I have always very much centered student voice in my work throughout the college. Would regularly ask for input about what was working or was not. And we changed a lot of policies based on what our students told us. And I think it's really important to not personalize the feedback. It doesn't mean people aren't doing really good work. It's just not meeting the needs of what the learner needs. And I think it led to some policy change statewide and nationally. So I think student voice is key in designing. It's a fundamental element. If you have something you're providing, you need to think about the end user. Looking at Workforce Pell right now, I've been struck by how little of the conversation has touched on student experience or thinking about how you design a process with students at the center. So we know the federal regulations for Workforce Pell. We know there's some rather wonky approval process that will happen at the state level. From there, we need to then be designing the process at the college level from the student experience up to map to those. And I continue to see it just as a push down. Here's the federal requirements. Here what we're going to do. Here's the data. And then it's a wonder if it doesn't work for, it's no wonder it doesn't work for students necessarily. And so I think it's really important that you center and you really engage in that kind of human-centered design to think about you have a student coming in, they want a better life, they want a better career, they want access to the training, they don't have a lot of time, they're balancing childcare, transportation challenges. How do you make sure that you design Workforce Pell so it's one more resource in their toolbox? How do you make sure the enrollment is seamless? How do you make sure they get exposure to all the programs that might meet their needs? So I think that's why is that you make your programs better and you have better outcomes when you listen to students.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important for us all to meet students where they are, not where we think they should meet
Yeah.
us.
Yeah,
And a student is a student, whether you're on the
exactly.
professional credit side or you're on
Yeah.
the academic side.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about we're not just training, we're transforming around workforce education.
Yeah, I think part of that is I think for too long in community colleges and higher ed, there's been a hierarchy of what's considered the more rigorous or valuable education pathways. So transfer tends to be framed as the more rigorous and elevated element. And that is a critical pathway. Transfer is really important. We need people from the GED up to the PhD. There is no questioning the value of that entire higher education pathway. But I think for too long, workforce has been considered not part of that, outside of that. So it's less than, and it's training to the skill, or it's, I think, been framed that it doesn't create a pathway. So for us, transforming really is those skills are part of a pathway that provides that career and college progression, that it builds very valuable skills that map to the needs of the employer, but it also enriches the life of that person. It can transform their earning potential. It can transform their exposure to the different career paths. And I think as we look at workforce, it's really important that we don't repeat the ills of the past where there was occupational tracking where women and learners of color were tracked into lower wage occupations. And so that we are not doing that, we are creating opportunity where all skills are valuable, where a student is a student is a student, and we're really making sure that if people want to go into the trades, that is a viable and respected pathway. If they want to become a PhD, a college professor, that is a viable pathway, so that we move away from this hierarchy of higher education, which I think is a lot of what the national pushback is about, is just not valuing people's skills and career choices and what they bring to their communities and how they contribute.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Now, you mentioned you've got an upcoming conference happening.
Yeah.
There's a theme and tell us what's happening around that.
Yeah, so we are really excited to be going to Palm Springs, California in the fall. We do our annual conference in the fall every year. And our theme this year is transforming the landscape. So really looking at what does that mean for student opportunity, for our workforce ecosystems, for our local economies, and just really the impact that community colleges and workforce education have on their communities and on people's lives. And so we will be there October 20th through 22nd, and we have calls for proposals opening up. They'll be due at the end of April. And we really work to elevate practitioner voices and student voices. And so really want that to be our focus, is that we really believe our experts are those who are doing the work, supporting the work, leading the work, or experienced in our college programs. And so excited. Every year I learn something from our partners, and I think that's the feedback I get as well, is that it's a really helpful conference and that it provides a space for that networking and learning amongst peers.
Yeah, I'm excited about attending. I attended this past fall and it's a really good conference and it's not overwhelming. It's bringing a whole cast of wonderful practitioners together for presentations and then additional conversations. I've been and it's a well-run, put together conference that isn't spread over a long period of time. So I certainly am excited about attending. We're getting ready to close. So
Yeah.
tell us one piece of advice or one call of action that you'd like to share with our listeners?
One call of action or one piece of advice. I think the call to action is for college folks who are doing the good work, just really continue to tell their story. I think tell the story of the impact their work has, make sure their community partners know about it, work with national partners like NCWE so we can elevate and amplify that nationally and others in this space. And then I think continue to listen to students and stakeholders so we can collectively improve our outcomes for people and continue to transform our programs. Because I think there's a lot of really good work happening. And I think that's what I really have always loved about community college and workforce folks is they are happy to share their knowledge, their tools, their ideas, so that we really get this better outcomes as a collective. So I think continue to do that work. And also just thank you to everyone. I know it's good work, but it's a lot of work and it's hard work. And so I think there isn't enough appreciation extended to our community colleges and to the employer partners who work hand in hand to co-create opportunity to our community-based organizations. So that's the other thing is just making sure people know it can be very unseen work, but making sure they know it's appreciated and impactful.
Kate
Yeah.
Kinder, thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing your time with us today. And tell us the website.
It's www.ncwe.org. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like to learn more about the Harold Alphon Center for the Advancement of Maine's Workforce, please visit mccs.me.edu. And if you'd like to learn more about today's guests, be sure to check out our show notes for links and additional resources.